How many actors does it take to change a light bulb? Ah, the techie already did it.
Why do I let myself do this? Welcome to another Pixeled Moment, and today I want to continue talking about photographing performances on stage. Now, recently I had the opportunity during Tech Week to photograph some actors in a tiny little black box with the AC constantly blowing, as you might be able to hear. I wanted to play this safe, so I had the shutter speed set at 1/500th of a second. Now, they don't move very fast most of the time, but like I said, I wanted to play it safe so I didn't get any motion blur whatsoever. Now, with the lighting setup in here, the light is still pretty low, and I had to crank the ISO up to 6400, which I knew that was going to introduce quite a bit of noise. It's mostly fixable in Lightroom, but just in case anyone is not able to use Lightroom, I was using the 50mm lens f1.8, and I knew f1.8 was probably going to affect the depth of field between the actors, and depending on where they were in the focal plane, one person's face may have been sharp and another person's face, while they may have been right beside that person, might have been a little out of focus. But like they say, out of every 100 shots, 1 or 2 are really good. So I could live with that. At 50mm, I didn't mind. I've got tons of space in a black box to move around, especially during Tech Week when there's no audience. Now, looking at a couple of examples here, the first image, you can probably tell the focal plane, one actor's face is a little sharper and clearer than the other. That's just kind of how it is at f1.8, but I was more concerned about getting a decent amount of light in, and the color temperature had it set fairly low, and again, in Lightroom it's pretty fixable. I ended up adjusting most of the images to about 2700 Kelvin. I think that's a pretty good standard for indoor theater lighting if you don't have LEDs to work with, or even if you do, it's adjustable. This second set of images, I want to compare what the lens was trying to focus on. In the first one here, it wanted to focus on the actor's yellow jacket, because I think she was moving around, as opposed to the other actors sitting down at the table, which I wanted to focus on him instead. So in the next shot, all I did was move the camera slightly to the right, so she was more at the edge of the frame, and that way the camera would focus in on the other actor sitting across the table. It takes a lot of experimentation and moving around. And the third image, and this was one of my favorites personally, not just because it looked so clean, but also the composition and the dynamics of the situation, what was going on in the scene, which I think it captured it pretty well. And this is where the 1/500th shutter speed came in pretty handy. It looked pretty sharp. I could have gone down to maybe 1/250th to get the book to look a little bit of a blur when hitting him. That might have been effective as well. It sort of comes down to personal preference, and I'm still experimenting with how I can shoot each show, because each show is different the way you shoot it. But hopefully that gives a good indication of what to look for if you're ever going to photograph something on stage. You can probably get away with photographing a good drama where people sit around talking at 1/250th, or maybe even a little less. The official photographer that came in to photograph the night after I did it I think his images looked a lot better, but then again, he was using a 35mm f1.4 lens, which that's a nice piece of glass at $1,600 or $1,700. But I also looked at a few images of a show that he shot here a few months ago, and that was of a drama. That shutter speed was at 1/80th of a second, and the ISO was like at 800. So pretty clean, not a whole lot of noise in that, but he was able to do that. I think a big part was because early on in the show, you can see the actors aren't moving rapid fire very fast from the back of the stage to the front or side to side, all that. Then again, I wanted to make sure my images were the sharpest they could be for the situation that it was in. And I want to show one more image, and if anyone could leave a comment down below and maybe offer some constructive criticism or just give me the answer to this, I'd greatly appreciate it. As I was using the 50mm lens, and even after the lens correction in Lightroom, and a couple of shots I noticed some faint noise rings on the outer edges, and I wasn't using a UV filter or anything. I had the lens hood on, so no unnecessary light was hitting the edges, I thought. I'm just not sure why that was, but it's not the end of the world. Anyway, there it is. Hope you enjoyed this, and be excellent, and I will see y'all in the next one.